Let's bring in our panel to discuss former GOP California congressional candidate Deanna Lorraine, GOP strategist Joseph Pinion, retired Marine Corps intelligence officer Lieutenant Colonel Hal Kempfer. Thank you all for coming on to chat with us this Thursday morning. Colonel, I'll start with you. If this is true, what is the gravity of this situation? How much concern is there? We know that China has already denied some of this, calling this slanderous. But how important is this to look at?
Sean, it's very important. There has been some discussion of, is this an act of war? I can tell you for many years we've been looking at what we call cyber threats, the whole genre of cyber warfare, and the lawyers have been asking, when does the threshold get hit that a cyber attack actually becomes an act of war? Now, we've never declared an act of war. No country has because of a cyber attack. But the gravity of this is such that not only are they trying to steal a vaccine and therapeutics, but there's a concern that they could accidentally interfere or block some of our advanced work in that area. And there's also fear that maybe there might be some deliberate attempt, particularly maybe not so much China, but Iran is also hacking, and they may go in there to somewhat interfere with our response.
Joe Pinion, I want to bring you into the conversation here as well. You being a GOP strategist, maybe you can shed some light as to what the president is thinking could be a response to this situation, as well as their overall criticism of China in regards to what information was relayed regarding COVID-19 and when it was done.
Well, look, I think, again, we have to remember this all begins with China lying. The obfuscation, the many ways in which they have prevented America and the world from reacting in a timely manner to the worst pandemic we have seen in nearly 100 years. So we have to say that everything that comes from China, now understanding what this new information revealed, that they are perhaps even trying to impede the efforts to develop a vaccine to respond to the pandemic that is largely a response to their lying about it. I think those are the things that I think the president has to be talking about forcefully, to understand that, again, China is not our friend, that they mean to do not only America wrong, but the fabric of the world wrong. And I think if we can start talking about those points, those salient details, to get people to understand that how you get from a World Health Organization telling people that this cannot be transmitted person to person, to people in Nebraska dying, it all starts with the unfortunate truth that China simply cannot be trusted.
Deanna, bring you in on this.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because every time that President Trump talks about China, having a good relationship or building a good relationship with them, it just seems like things like this continue to happen. And there's a betrayal there. There's a breach of trust there. And it's almost not surprising anymore, but it is shocking that now they may be trying to impede on our vaccine efforts and try to surveil and spy there and get information there and sabotage those efforts. I mean, how much more can we take? This has been started by China, and it's continuing by China. So it's really a travesty, and I think that President Trump should be talking about this more and either making sanctions or he needs to be more punitive, I think, at this point, because enough is enough. We cannot continue to jeopardize our health and also our cybersecurity to China and potentially Iran.
Well, President Trump has announced that he is mobilizing the U.S. military to distribute a COVID-19 vaccine when one becomes available. Lieutenant Kempfer, what does this decision to invoke the military to distribute the vaccine look like? Have we seen this before?
Emma, we've seen a lot of things like this. The military, I worked in this for years. It's an area called Defense Support of Civil Authorities or Civil Military Support. Bring in the military, active duty, reserve, and National Guard in a variety of statuses. Very common. In fact, early into this pandemic, you saw National Guard troops being brought in. When the USNS Mercy and Comfort, when they were brought in, that is also part of the Department of Defense. What you have with the military is a very organized force that can be quickly put to task, if you will. They can be quickly trained. They come in very disciplined, very trained already. And there's a lot of specialized units that are a lot of times in the reserve component that deal with medical issues. So there's a lot of pluses. The downside with the military is they tend to be a little more expensive. But with that said, they bring a capability that's tough to replicate anywhere else.
Joe, it said the president wants to go ahead and have it ready, even though there is no vaccine, to be clear. But when there is, to have 300 million doses ready and available, this president has been very optimistic about this whole vaccine timeline, despite what you're going to hear from others on this. But talking about that, again, the positivity, the optimism, let's say that, on this president and a vaccine. Elaborate on that.
Look, I think that the president needs to be optimistic. I think that's always good for the American people to see that we have somebody in charge who is trying to seek our better angels and work towards better outcomes. I think we also, though, need to temper those expectations to say that the way in which we can get a vaccine into the hands of people who need them the fastest is to give them out as they become available, which means I do think we might be talking about some type of lottery system or some type of system that allows us to make sure that we are making sure that all communities are served equitably, but also, again, not making sure that we have to have over 300 million vaccines available before we start administering it, because that just increases the timeline. More vaccines become available. That also allows us to have a greater halo of trust and returning to everyday life.
Yeah, and Deanna, I mean, if you end up waiting for a vaccine, unfortunately, some of these businesses that are closed right now may never be able to reopen. Deanna?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. You cut out.
Yeah, I was just highlighting Joe's fact. You know, if we're waiting for this vaccine to happen, some businesses that are closed right now might not be able to reopen.
Well, I don't think that it should be based on a vaccine. You know, we need to reopen and we need to get people back to work, and it shouldn't be based on whether we have a vaccine or not. You know, we've already seen treatments like hydroxychloroquine that have been very effective, and vitamin C. And, you know, if we wait for our entire country to open because of a vaccine, it could be a year, it could be longer than a year. So this isn't a competition as how fast we can get a vaccine. I think it should really just be how can we quickly and safely reopen the economy and get people back to work, and try to have these natural remedies first, because they seem to be working. Doctors everywhere are talking about the effects of it and how it's been creating breakthroughs. So why aren't we really talking about that first instead of having to wait for a vaccine?
Yeah, great point. Good conversation we're having. Joe and Deanna, stick around. Retired Marine Corps Intelligence Officer Lieutenant Colonel Hal Kempfer, thank you for joining us. We appreciate the time, all of you.